Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are joining us. My name is Dr. Natasha Falahi, the Sensitive Doctor, and I am very excited to introduce our special guest today, Karen Kalenovich. Karen is an empowerment coach and certified master practitioner of NLP, mental and emotional release, and hypnotherapy, who helps highly sensitive empaths and intuitives clear out negative, misaligned patterns by accessing the power of the unconscious mind. Unlike other coaches and therapies that mainly focus on taking action or rehashing the past, Karen helps her clients easily tap into the deeper patterns at the subconscious level so they can reprogram their thoughts and energy to match their intended outcomes. Karen, it is a pleasure to have you joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natasha. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. I know the specialty of a lot of what you work with is something that will really serve our audience and the empaths and sensitives watching today. But before we dive into all of your work, I'm curious how you got into doing the work that you do and kind of what is your story and your connection with the empath and the highly sensitive world?
Yes, that's a big question. So to to kind of break it down, I've always been sensitive. I grew up in a family where I was the only sensitive in my immediate family, so that was a difficult experience growing up. I also experienced some abuse quite early on in my childhood. And I feel like that's also a part of an empath journey a lot of the times, unfortunately. So that was a part of my earlier history. And then, growing up in my teenage years, my psychic and intuitive abilities really started to amp up, and even my interest in those types of energies and things that are unseen really peaked at that time. And I had fun with tarot and just doing readings here and there with my friends. So in that way it was fun. There was kind of a light side of being an empath. But some of the family dynamics that I grew up with are like stereotypical empath, complicated dynamics between actually all of my family members, which are mostly now healed. But then in my adult years, my early adult years, I went into teaching. So that was my career of choice. And I taught high school and middle school for 15 years. Enjoyed it very, very much. But along the way, I would say in my late 20s, I started to have kind of a crisis happening within myself where I think there was a combination of things. So one was working with over 185 kids a day and not having the proper cleansing or grounding strategies and not even knowing that I was an empath. So dealing with all of that excess energy really took a toll on me. And I ended up going to a traditional doctor because I was having trouble sleeping. And so that kind of opened up a whole door to this nightmarish world of psychotropic drugs. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar 2, none of which I have, by the way, because I was experiencing things that are normal for empaths that the wider scope of our world didn't understand at the time. This was in the early 2000s. So empaths was just kind of like a very faint light in the world at that time. So I was put on all these different medications, which made me very sick and complicated my journey. But it also showed me that, gosh, there's something different about you, and drugs are not the answer for you. Now, I'm not saying they're not valuable and useful to other people, but in my own journey as an empath, they were very toxic to my physical system as being highly sensitive. And energetically, it actually created holes in my field, making me more susceptible to other energies that were not of the light. So that whole journey, started to turn around when I had one really special psychiatrist that he spoke with me for one session, and he's like, there's nothing wrong with you. He's like, you are highly sensitive. He's like, do you have dreams that are lucid? Do you pick up energies if you walk into? He was asking me all of those questions like you would see in Dr. Judith Orloff's book. You know what I'm saying? Like all of these check marks. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. And I finally felt seen. I finally felt like, wait a minute, you know this about me? And he just was matter of fact about it. He was an older gentleman getting ready to retire, but his idea was, you're sensitive and you just need to recover from some of the traumas that you've been through and that sort of thing, and learn some strategies to deal with who you really are. And he ended up doing dream interpretation with me, and trying to get me off of those medications. So shortly after, I was able to get off of them, but it really was a nightmare being on them, because it really messed with my whole chemistry and my whole balance as even a soul being. Yeah. So that's my journey. And all the while I was interested in intuition and energy, and did it as a hobby, even as I taught. Mm-hmm. So it's stuff I did for free. And eventually I bit the bullet when I had my 2 kids and decided, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to do what's in my heart to do. And I felt like my season with teaching in the regular classroom had ended. So I transitioned into the work I do today, which is coaching and healing work and empowerment. So that kind of sums it up.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And, your whole personal experience with that. I think that's such a common story we hear in all of these experts and empaths and highly sensitive people that I'm talking to as well. And my own story, it usually starts with this overwhelm, right? Where there's that experience of trauma somehow. And because we're more sensitive, we pick it up and we carry it in a different way, whether that's big T trauma or little t trauma, as we're children or as we're growing. And then many people have that experience of looking for help, looking for answers. And a lot of times, things like conventional medicine or labeling or putting a pathology on something isn't really helping the root cause. And actually, it's not that there's anything wrong with you or with us. It's that the way the world is sort of structured and we exist in it is sort of overwhelming for people like us. And there's just starting to be this emergence and understanding of how we process the world differently. And I think that's such a beautiful way of explaining that in your personal journey, and also really connecting with this experience that so many of us are having. And I think what's really amazing about your story and what I've seen in your work too is you did transform all of that, found your superpowers, and really headed down this way to fulfill your purpose and now help other people fulfill their purpose. So tell us a little bit about the work you do in helping people with finding their purpose and really, realizing their dreams, especially through blockages with money and growth and those sort of things.
Yeah, I find that light workers know that they're light workers, and I think empaths, sensitives, and intuitives are light workers. And so, they come with that mission, and I've always wanted to help, always. So it's something that we're aware of when we're very small. And I think most of us are pretty by the book. I mean, a lot of the empaths I work with have professional careers, and they're service professionals, nurses, psychologists, doctors. They are helping people already. And yet there's a big part of themselves that hasn't been included in their work. And it's the spiritual part, it's the energetic part. So what they end up wanting to do is incorporate that aspect of themselves into their work. And so that's a lot of what I've helped people do in some of my empath courses, is to just get them to the point of, this is who I am. How can I infuse this light into my work, as opposed to let me cover over my intuition, let me hide it because nobody gets that. And even though we're like 20% or less of the entire population, it doesn't mean we're not supposed to be who we are. So a lot of the work that I do is helping people to be more of themselves and actually realize their worth, realize their worth and the fact that they are more than enough. Because when they start to venture out like I did into entrepreneurship and owning their own business, it's kind of like, well, is there a degree for this? Is there a certification so I can prove that I'm enough? So I can prove that I'm worthy of helping these people when in fact they're already ready. Like they've been ready. They've got years of experience, years of wisdom. They have their intuition. They have that sense of energy that the average person, that other 80%, lacks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something really special about empaths, intuitives, and sensitives because we bring something. It's just kind of like that flavor, and people can't quite put their finger on it, but it really makes a difference. And so the more we bring that forth, the more we realize how worthy we are, the more we allow ourselves to be abundant. And money is always a conversation when it comes to empaths in their purpose. Mm-hmm. So usually people know what their purpose is. They're just having trouble being in the purpose and actually standing in it and walking in that path. And a lot of times they are, they're holding themselves very small because as empaths, we grew up learning certain stories about what was available to us. And so a lot of those stories we carry with us until we learn how to release them.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And I know that, you talk about most of light workers know their purpose. And I think that is something that's deeply, held within us, and tapping into that intuition helps people really see that. But a lot of times when they try to go out in the world and make things happen, we're taught that you really need to set goals and you need to have these affirmations and you need to take all this action. Why does that not always produce the results that people want?
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is such a big one because we're learning from, the normal people usually, and there's no discrimination there. It's just it's a different perspective, so we can't do things the normal way and have it work. So, when people take action and they're really committed to that action and they're saying the affirmations, they've got the vision boards, they're doing all the right things. And those are all good, valuable, effective things to do. But what needs to happen first that is often overlooked is the emotional, the mental stuff at those deeper subconscious levels. And the very nature of the subconscious mind is covert. So, we're really working with a teeny sliver of our minds with this 5% of the conscious mind. The other 95% is unconscious. So when you're setting goals, when you're saying affirmations, when you're taking action, that's the conscious mind. So you've got this little 5% doing all this stuff and working really, really hard, getting exhausted, getting burnt out, maybe feeling resentful because of the lack of return. But really what needs to get done first is to release that misaligned emotional and mental baggage at the unconscious level. And then it's time to take action because we need to be in a certain state in order to take action. Otherwise, the energy of pushing and trying and it's not enough, that energy is what influences the energy of the outcomes that people have. And that's the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think it is that the unconscious mind is often overlooked in healing and personal development?
The unconscious mind is covert by nature. It's automatic. So it's always running in the background and it's not something that we look at very often because it's just sort of controlling everything from our breathing to our digestion to the thoughts we think to tying our shoes. All of those things we don't need to think about. It's running on autopilot. So that's one reason why. Another reason is that sometimes the unconscious mind can be very mysterious. What is in there? What is underneath the surface? I don't know. It's like looking into an ocean and not knowing what's underneath. Is a shark going to bite my foot? Is a big old kelp bed going to wrap around my legs? In that sense, there's this unexpected and kind of fear-based perception of the unconscious mind. I don't know what I'm going to find down there. So that's another reason And then, sometimes people just don't know how. They don't know how to access the unconscious mind. They see themselves having these behaviors, these patterns that loop and repeat that they don't want, but they don't know how to
Yeah.
change that.
Yeah, that's a great way of kind of breaking that down, because I think especially empaths, this might be something like you said that naturally we were exploring like through dreams or stuff like that, but we didn't realize there were tools around it, or there was actually, systematic ways of growing that and connecting more with our unconscious and aligning with our conscious mind as well. And so when it comes to actually the things that people want to achieve, one of the biggest blocks that we hear often with empaths, highly sensitive people, is this idea around not just knowing what their purpose is, but actually fulfilling it and seeing that reflected in their life through success and financial growth and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the specific money blocks that sensitives, empaths, intuitives tend to encounter on their path to financial wealth.
Yes. Okay. So getting into the nitty gritty. Yeah. Okay. So when empaths are on path, they're on purpose, they've made a decision within themselves that I'm going to do this. That is wonderful. Such a great step. And then comes the other stuff, which is how am I going to make a career out of this? As opposed to doing glorified volunteer work, which is what I've seen a lot of people do that are of the light and they want to help, and at the same time they're not helping themselves. So there's that bit of discrepancy in what they're doing. But there are four main blocks. Okay, so the first block is, well, I really want money, but I'm kind of wanting it too much, a little bit too attached to the money. So it's that energy of desperation. It's, I never have enough, or I don't know if I'm going to have enough for rent this month. I'm struggling already. And it's that type of desperate energy. That's one. A second money block is not wanting money enough. So this is a really powerful one because it's one that a lot of people have, and they think that it kind of makes them a better person in a way if they don't want money. It's like money is bad. If you want to be abundant, then you're greedy, you're selfish. And so there's a fear around that. So there's kind of like, it could have been picked up in their family, or it could be just the community, whatever environment that they're in that kind of influences their thoughts in that way. But oftentimes it's something from a long, long time ago. And it's I'm not attached to money. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's kind of the energy of apathy. I don't care. I don't really care about money. That's not what I'm about. And it's not what I'm about either. But it has to be a point of focus if you want to turn what you're doing into something that's going to generate a living, paying your bills, your livelihood, and funding the things that you want. There has to be desire. And so that's block number 2 is apathy. I don't care. Block number 3 is simply not believing you can have it. It is seeing everyone else out there doing it and thinking, well, they have it because of this, but I can't have it because I'm me. I can't have it because I'm not ready yet, or I need this certification. There's like all of these external factors that they are looking at to determine if they actually can do it. So it's that lack of belief. And anything that you don't believe that you can do, you won't be able to do, So like that's part of the conscious and unconscious mind. It's like the conscious mind says, I want to make $5,000 a month doing the work that I'm meant to do. Okay, great. That's the goal. But then if your unconscious mind is like, I don't believe you can do it because of X, Y, and Z, then you've got two parts of your mind running in different directions. It's hard to get there. It's like driving with your foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. It just doesn't go anywhere. So that's block number 3. And then the fourth block is believing you can have it, the money, the abundance, the lifestyle you want, but feeling bad or guilty for wanting it. That is that deeper level of the unconscious where we're looking at unworthiness. We're looking at shame. And those are signature energies that are often picked up in the imprinting years, which is from 0 to 7. And those are the most influential times. It's like imprinting our minds, our energies with, here you go. Here's a preview of what your life's going to be, because that's the energy people take with them. So that's that fourth one. And it's the deepest layer, feeling wrong or guilty or bad for having more or wanting more. And I have heard that time and time again, and sometimes people don't even realize they have that belief. It's just that they're preventing themselves from even setting a goal, or they're preventing themselves from raising their rates, or, doing something practical to bring in more money to support them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That was such a concise breakdown. I love the way you talked about that, because these are things that, I've seen in other people, clients that I work with, even identify in myself, but, really breaking it down into these limitations being either an energy of desperation around money, an energy of apathy around money, an energy of kind of insecurity or incapability, and also an energy of unworthiness and shame. And really kind of looking at all those different layers. People might have one or more of them, but these are things that can be addressed to kind of remove that charge around it. And I know that, when I do trauma work with people and we really look at that unconscious mind and how it's being held in the mind, body, spirit, when there's a charge around energies like that, that's usually what's, either causing pain, suffering, illness, blockages, those sort of things. So I think, one thing I hear a lot in the realm of kind of coaching people through wealth and success and growth is really thinking about money as energy. And I think as empaths and sensitive, that becomes a really excellent way to think about it. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, if we just see money as energy, not as this evil thing or something that we can't do or we're not capable or worthy of having, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, money is definitely an energy, but just like anything else, money is it's not alive, but it is an energy. And so I could say that money is a neutral energy. Okay, so it's not positive or negative. It's really the meaning that we give it, and the meaning that we give it comes from our unconscious mental and emotional baggage. So if we have a positive perspective of money, then money is positive. If we have a negative, fearful perspective, then it's like not good. So, most of the people that I've worked with that have struggled with money, they have that fear-based type of relationship with money. It's not neutral for them. But money is neutral. It's just changing the perspective and actually making it positive. Looking at money as something that's meant to support them. It's like money in the hands of really good people is probably going to be used for good, but a lot of times light workers associate themselves, if they were to make more money, with criminals, people who are selfish, people who steal, people who take advantage of people. And they would never be that way, ever.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. But for some reason, unconsciously, there's that fear of being connected with something dark or something negative.
Yeah.
So it's just reframing the perspective of money and allowing it to be a source of good in your life, as well as everyone that you come in contact with. Because the more we feel supported, the more light we're going to have to share with others.
Yeah. So those of us who are identifying a little bit with what you're saying and saying, oh man, I do recognize that I have some of those blockages or some of those energies around money. What are some of the keys to healing money blocks and experiencing financial overflow?
Yeah. So I usually start people off with release work. And release work is clearing out negative emotion in your past history that causes the triggers and contributes to the negative energy, which is out of proportion to anything that you would experience today or in your future. Okay, so that would be the first step, clearing the emotions. The second step would be releasing negative and limiting beliefs. It's those specific beliefs like, I never have enough. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. And I had one that was like really profound that actually opened up the ceiling from my income, which was you can't make more money than the men in your life. Nobody ever told me that, but I picked that up, and that's what I did for my whole life. I didn't make more than my dad, my brother, and then with my husband, never allowed myself to make more than he did. And when I figured that out, I got to that deeper layer. It was like, okay, let's handle it. Right. So it's a way of reversing a limiting belief so it's no longer true. And that's part of the release work as well. And then putting in its place. And this is where affirmations come in handy, right? This is the time for affirmations after the release work. So the most important step to start with is the release work, clearing out all of that old stuff that sets us into the same cycles over and over again, reinforcing the realities that we don't want. Once that is cleared, it's like, okay, now I can have regular emotions at the appropriate levels in proportion to whatever's happening, and the beliefs can change. And that's where the reprogramming can happen.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to start thinking about it, because I think sometimes people just feel overwhelmed and they feel like just overnight they need to change the way they feel about money or they're going about it. But you're talking about first clearing those emotions around it and then releasing those negative limiting beliefs. And a lot of that, isn't necessarily done by just repeating positive affirmations about money. You're talking about using really specific techniques. So tell us for example, what is neuro-linguistic programming or mental emotional release or hypnotherapy? How do you use these tools to address these issues?
Yeah, these are ways to get directly to the unconscious mind. So it's basically using language patterns to be able to tap into the five senses, to be able to tap into the way that we design our reality in our minds. Because if you think about it, everything we experience, it comes through the brain through sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, or emotion. Even self-talk we look at. So those are the thoughts that we hear in our own heads and what we say to ourselves. So there are different placements, different organizations in our minds. And usually when people come to me, they are using an ineffective strategy. So a placement for a limiting belief is going to be different from a placement of an empowering belief, but it's really different for each person. So it's a matter of kind of restructuring things at those deeper levels, and we do it with language patterns.
Awesome. And is this also incorporated in things like hypnotherapy? I think that's something that a lot of people are really curious about. So can you tell us a little bit more about what hypnotherapy is and how it's used?
Yeah, hypnotherapy is also, along with the MER and the NLP, one of the fastest ways to create transformation that I've found. So phobias, anxiety, PTSD, allergies, even can be shifted in quite a short time. It's amazing, really, and it's all done through using language that speaks to the unconscious mind, which organizes all of your events, which speaks in symbols, which understands reality kind of like a 7-year-old. So it is quite simple. It needs lessons in order to move forward and let go of the emotions. And so there's a lot of different things that a hypnotherapist will facilitate to guide someone through a process to let go of whatever they need to let go of, and to put in things that are actually going to empower them and help them to feel safe in those changes. I had a client that wanted to quit vaping. It's like one of those things. And, she tried and she tried and she couldn't do it. And we did one session for an hour and she's done. She didn't need patches, didn't need to wean off of it. Like, your mind, unconscious mind, is so powerful. And it really is that supercomputer that can do all these things that the thinking mind can't. So that's how powerful the hypnotherapy is. It's just using that language to get to the deeper levels and assist the person in whatever their goals and outcomes are. The hypnotherapy creates really quick changes, and that's the nature of the unconscious mind. It is very quick, sometimes to the point where it makes absolutely no sense as to how that could have happened, and yet they're living vape free or whatever, anxiety free, whatever it is for them. So that's why I like this work, is it's very fast and it doesn't require people to do or say anything that they're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about the traumas to release the trauma, which is revolutionary to most people that I've worked with, because they've done therapy for years and talked about the same stuff over and over again, kind of ruminating, as opposed to something really structured and intentional to be able to release that instead. And just why not be done with it in 60 minutes, as opposed to like 6 months or 6 years,
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So let's think about, a specific example that's really common. There's a lot of people who maybe have done a lot of therapy, or they feel like they have, dealt with their past. They've, done some trauma healing, those sort of things, but they still seem to be struggling with scarcity, for example. That's a really common one. What would you say to that in terms of healing the negative emotions and the memories? If somebody feels like they've already done a lot of, past work on the things that did occur that were limiting them.
Yeah, I find that a lot of empaths are very self-aware and they do the work. They'll do all the right things, which is great. And they've probably elevated themselves along the way. But at some point they hit a ceiling. And especially when it comes to money, money is very contextual. So, someone might be very abundant in their family life. They might be very abundant, in their spiritual life, which I think a lot of empaths are they're very abundant there. But then when it comes to money, like the M word, it is like there's a lot of scarcity attached to it. So those types of beliefs need to be handled, and it is context specific. So we look directly at career and what are some of the values in the career area, and see, a lot of times money is not even one of their values when it comes to career. And that's a problem because, career is all about making a living, right? So whether you're getting a salary every month versus getting paid directly from your clients, it's required for a career to be a career. But for some reason, there is a scarcity mindset when someone is looking at just the area of career, especially in their own business. It's like, should I charge that much? All these different thoughts occur, and each of those need to be dealt with one by one. So it's a discovery process of what an individual's limiting beliefs are. But I've found that many of them are very common, like, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I need another this or that, I don't deserve the money, and none of those are true. But when we believe something, it plants the seed for your unconscious mind to make it a reality, because that's one of its jobs. So when we change the belief systems from within, then we can change the experience of scarcity to abundance, where, okay, it's no longer bad or wrong for me to be making more money than my husband, even while I work less. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a little bit of guilt attached to that in myself, and a lot of this is just realizing some of the baggage. And I like how earlier you said big T and little t. It's like there are things that we pick up that can be so subtle that craft our beliefs about what is available to us, what we're supposed to do, and how we're supposed to do it. And in my mind, my little childhood mind that stayed with me through the years, she thought, because of how she grew up, that mom wasn't supposed to work. And if she did, it was only part-time. And she never made more than dad. and it was just fun money. So it wasn't a real thing. It wasn't a real job. So there was a part of that flavor, because I still work part-time, but now I make more than I ever did in my teaching career, or anything I've ever done. But I had to allow myself to look at that belief and know that I wasn't traumatized. Nobody told me that, but it was still a belief that I had that was affecting my ability to move to the higher levels of money and income.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have that, especially, if they grew up in that sort of family, which I think has been fairly common. But really it's different for everyone. And it's just a matter of identifying and recognizing the limiting beliefs and changing them. And part of that I do, and part of it I teach the skills of actually changing the language patterns to reprogram the mind.
Awesome. I can hear, in that example you're talking about, I can hear, a question. I can, like, if this is a room full of people raising their hands and going, okay, that's great if I do that work and I change my unconscious mind around my ideas around making more money or having my own abundance or making more money than my husband or than my parents made or things like that. But how, in your experience, have yourself or people, your clients you've seen address the dynamic shifts that happen outside of yourself when something like that happens? Because sometimes, there's people who maybe don't come from wealth or abundance, and they're able to break through those unconscious beliefs, but all of a sudden they make a lot of money, and then their family, their relationship changes. Maybe like distant cousins start coming into their life, or they start, getting a lot of negative energy in other relationships because of things like jealousy or power dynamics or things like that. So I can hear people getting really excited about this idea of like, wow, I can break through my own limiting beliefs, but then also wondering what's that next step? What happens when it starts affecting the relationships in your life?
Yes, that is so good. And I had a conversation about this with a class I taught earlier today, because it is kind of a fear in the back of people's minds, which creates a belief that needs to be dealt with. But say they do deal with it and they're like moving forward and being abundant and having more than they need, and they're being observed by these people that are used to them being at a certain income level. That can be very off-putting for the people that are used to you being at a certain level. And what I would say to that is allow those people to have their experience of your wealth and abundance. Allow them to have their own experience and to let go of their reaction. Now, sometimes there's something that happens energetically when people observe these changes, right? Like you mentioned, envy, jealousy, some of those yucky negative energies that can be kicked up in other people as they watch you living the way that you're living, it's a deterrent for a lot of empaths. Like, I don't want to be that person. But you're actually meant for more. But the people that start thinking about you and kind of like, oh, how'd she get that? Or she doesn't deserve that, or all of this negative talk, that comes across as that psychic attack energy, and so that does need to be recognized and identified, because it is real, and I've had those experiences too. And it's not even a direct interaction. It's usually an observation, and it can happen online, it can happen in any different way, over the phone, text, whatever. And so there's an expansive energy that we get to occupy versus shrinking down. Because a lot of times people will shrink down and be like, oh, I don't want to be that. And then they'll start changing their belief systems back. Yeah, it's not safe for me to be abundant, right? But it's actually just that next level. So it's actually being able to take up more space and be okay with other people. I kind of think of it as sort of admiring, you know what I mean? Like they want that. They wish they could have that. They don't know how you did it because it doesn't make sense, which is another really fun thing about this type of manifestation. It doesn't make sense. You're not doing a bunch of sales calls. You're not doing a bunch of paid advertising. A lot of this is energetic, and as the beliefs change, you're able to support yourself quite miraculously. Um, but all those other people, it's like they will lose interest eventually, and they'll get used to your new normal, just like you will. And you'll reach higher and higher levels as you allow people to have their experience of your abundance. And, they might learn something from it as well.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great way of kind of thinking about it. Cause I know that this is something that hinders a lot of people, whether they're witnessing it themselves or they're witnessing it in other people. Like, for example, I actually just had an example of this yesterday, when being on social media and following a lot of people that are doing amazing work in this world, people that are really changing paradigms and helping hundreds of thousands of people. And there was somebody who I follow who's gaining a lot of success and helping a lot of people. And I started seeing these little comments in the corner being like, oh, poor little rich girl. And I was just so shocked by that comment from a troll, right? A troll online. But it's the idea of using that rich girl as an insult for somebody who was stepping into a purpose and serving and helping others. I like, my mind would have never gone there. And I was like, what a strange comment to hear. But I think it's a lot of what you're talking about here, where, probably there is a level of, like you said, admiration there, but that person is really like chaotic or being really violent to themselves in a lot of ways, that they're just projecting that out onto others.
Yeah, projecting is the key word there, because it has nothing to do with that light worker you're talking about. You know what I mean? Nothing to do with her whatsoever. And it never does. It really never does. It's like the jealous sibling, that doesn't want you to have that or whatever. It's just like that. And so it's an expression of their own insecurity. And, the answer to that could be block the person. Just something really practical, but also to be able to clear your energy, which is kind of a different topic. But we all need to have our own strategies to be able to energetically clear ourselves, so that we're not carrying around all of that gunk. But yeah, it's surprising how a lot of people who aren't healed, and some of them are even empaths themselves. They aren't healed, so they are projecting out that unhealed baggage, and it's just out there. It's like they can try to keep it down and show themselves a certain way, but it ends up showing up anyway. They can't help themselves. And so I just send light to those people. I feel compassion for where they're at. I think we've all had an experience of envy, like, gosh, I want that too. And if we can look at people who are in those higher levels of where we want to be and know that there's more abundance, there's enough for everybody, more than enough for everybody. And you, as you are now, are more than enough, like we all are. But it's the belief that we allow ourselves to have that's going to take us to those higher levels, and just allow those people that are at the higher levels to inspire you, and just, gosh, I can do that too. If they can do it, I can do it too. How exciting that we are all rising, and not only in how we're helping people, but also being abundant, because money abundance is very spiritual. And I think that sometimes it's like this taboo topic when it comes to light workers or empaths. It's like, oh, we don't talk about money because we're not that way. It's like, well, what way is that? I mean, who doesn't want to have nice vacations? For some of us who are highly sensitive, we need to have a certain lifestyle. We cannot be working long hours. I don't like to be around a lot of people. I like working from home. I like that freedom, and I like working a small amount, that works for me. But in order to do that, I need to be able to set my rates higher. And that takes courage. It takes stretching. So that's a lot of what I teach as well, because it's a new way of being. And when we clear the beliefs, it's like, well, what do I believe instead? Like, what are those beliefs that are the wealth frequency types of beliefs? And it's putting those in and embodying those. That was a
Awesome.
long-winded answer, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I mean, you're really talking about genuinely investing in the things that matter to you in your life, and working kind of from that place of the things you invest in are the things that grow. And whether that's the money you're investing in yourself, or really the time and energy that you're putting in these places, and how, you can build that experience of that life for yourself from, really looking at how you want to design your life and how you need to kind of balance all of those energies. And yeah, this has been such a fascinating and enlightening conversation. So for people who want to dive deeper into this work and learn more, can you share with us where they can, get more information from you? Do you have programs or books or ways that people can work with you?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for this conversation, too. It's been so much fun. I always love having these conversations and being a part of an amazing summit like this. You can reach me at healinginbloom.com, and that's my website. I do have some courses available. The money course is not available on the site, but it will be re-released in 2022. So just stay in touch with me through my website, and details will come out in 2022.
Awesome. And so given everything we've talked about, I think we've touched on so many points, and you've given so many tips and gems for people to start applying these ideas to their life. But if you had to pick one thing that you could leave us with today that people could start applying, our listeners and our viewers could apply to make change in their life today, what's that one thing you want to leave us with?
I would start challenging the limiting beliefs, start being aware of them, what those quiet thoughts are in the background, and actually challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? Is this like a fact that I need to have this in order to have that, or that all people who have abundance are greedy? Is that really true? No, it's not true. Like the sun rises and sets every day. It's not true, So if you can prove it untrue, at least logically, you can start using the logic for that, which normally we don't do, but it's like you have to start picking holes in the limiting beliefs. So that's what I would say. Start questioning those beliefs and start asking yourself the opposite of that. What if it were actually great if I were abundant? And start exploring the possibilities, because limiting beliefs are so constricting. It's only one way. Mm-hmm. If you're abundant, you're greedy. That's it. That's not true. Like there's all these different expressions of abundance. So it's just opening up by asking, is that really true? No, it's not. Well, what else might be true? And then start journaling about that. And you'll be surprised at what you can come up with on your own. Your subconscious mind comes through quite beautifully through writing. So I would encourage people to write their ideas down and their insights as they question and answer.
Awesome. Awesome. Karen, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your wisdom with us.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. What a great session with Karen Kalenovich. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you soon.